Look, we certainly share the concerns that so many of others have concerned, including the Secretary General, about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Name me one more nation, any other nation, that's doing as much as the United States to alleviate the pain and suffering of the people of Gaza. You can't. You just can't. And name another nation that is doing more to urge the Israeli counterparts, our Israeli counterparts, to be as cautious and deliberate as they can be in the prosecution of their military operations. You can't.
So that is John Kirby, official with the National Security Council. A little bit defensive there, a little bit snippy, almost. If people are concerned that the US, which is an incredibly powerful and wealthy state, is not doing enough as the civilian death toll in Gaza continues to mount. People have concerns. They want as many lives as possible to be saved. So to like point a finger at them and be like, hey, we give a lot of money and aren't we tweeting the right things? Why are you so mad? I don't think that's going to allay a lot of people's concerns. And it's not even that on the monetary side, it isn't sort of true. It is sort of true that a lot of aid is provided, but I think that context matters, and so we're gonna add that. So if you look at the raw numbers, in terms of amount of aid provided to Palestinians in 2022, and then since the beginning of this conflict, Biden has announced $100 million in humanitarian assistance. That was back in October. And as an individual country, there is no other country that provides more raw funding as a country, but all countries are not equal. Once you actually scale it to the size of the economy of the country, no, we are not the most generous when it comes to that. And in particular, when you put it in the context of, we also provide an incredible amount of aid, including specifically military aid that is helping the conflict to proceed against Gaza. I understand why people would be very concerned about that. And he wants us to not think about that context, but it seems relevant. Jackson, I want to start with you. What do you think about what Kirby had to say?
You know, you were right in terms of just kind of the general attitude. There's a few things I have to say. One, the narrative that Israel is in huge danger is failing from the sense of who they're in danger from. You know, Hamas being Palestinian civilians and how Hamas and Palestinian civilians are meshed into one as often as possible. That narrative really isn't working. As the death toll continues to rise, all that means is that people are going to pay more and more and more attention to it as the months pile on. It's going to be an issue that the Biden administration really has to do something about in a way that's going to shake things up, because Israel really doesn't have much reason to stop doing what they're doing unless they're forced to in some type of way, unless they're threatened in some type of way from a sense of, look, if you keep on doing this, we won't give you X, Y, and Z. But even, let's say the United States was giving way more to the Palestinian victims than we are. Even if we were, that attitude it shouldn't be there. You know what I mean? Because people are dying, people are suffering, people are in great need. And so again, even if we actually were giving more money, the attitude should be, how can we help more? Not whatever, so what, we've done enough. That's just not gonna fly. And it's a culture that they really need to do something about, because you see that with the IDF member who came on with Jake Tapper, and he basically was blaming whoever it was who didn't leave on time. That attitude is not working, which is a good thing. It's a good thing that people are outraged about what's been going on. So they really need to check that, or the American people and the world will check it for them.
Yeah, absolutely. What he said was despicable and disturbing to hear. It would be like if I shot someone in the leg and then gave them a Band-Aid and said, no one is doing more to alleviate the pain or bleeding from this gunshot wound than I am. Well, I gave them the wound in the first place. So when the United States continues to give Israel non-foreseen, unfettered access to our weapons arsenal, when we are continuing to fund this genocide of the Palestinian people, when our country is continuing to provide support, crucial support in blocking the UN from taking meaningful action to actually address the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, there is no leg to stand on. And in that conference, to to respond in that manner just shows that they're starting to crack under the pressure campaign that activists here, Palestinian activists, Jewish activists have been putting on them, where they have to descend into these ridiculous lies that are increasingly less believable. But what's disheartening is the fact that it seems the Biden administration has no intentions of asking Israel to stop ramping up their genocide in Gaza. They continue to provide financial, military, rhetorical support, political support, as I mentioned, in the UN for Israel. They are running defense for Israel. I mean, just the other day, the IDF said that the Biden administration went too far. The IDF said the Biden administration went too far with insinuating that the reason that Hamas didn't release female captives, female hostages, they heavily insinuated it was because of rape. And the IDF said that was too far. And yesterday, Biden, from his official Twitter account, whoever runs it, tweeted out the same thing with the same implication. This doesn't look to me like an administration that gives a single damn about what's happening to the Palestinian people, other than their desire to continue the genocide.
Yeah, well, look, and I can't read Biden's mind. I can't read Kirby's mind. Maybe John Kirby really does think that he and his team are doing as much as possible. Maybe they really want to limit civilian casualties and civilian suffering, and they're doing everything they can. It's failing, so we're still gonna criticize you. You're still gonna receive the pressure and the pushback until the actual situation on the ground changes. We're gonna talk about the reality, the numbers, the situation. It's horrible, and until that changes, people are not just gonna be satisfied because you say that you're trying hard. That's not how it works when the stakes are simply this high. And so, the United Nations says there are no safe places in Gaza nearly a week after the offensive was widened into the southern half of Gaza. Every once in a while, individual areas will be told and move to a safe place. They don't exist. Not a place with infrastructure and safety, access to food and medicine. It simply is not a thing that exists any longer inside of Gaza. More than 80% of the territory's population has fled their homes. But you're trying, so that's good. Just 69 trucks carrying aid entered Gaza from Egypt on Thursday. That is less than half what was entering during the brief truce between Israel and Hamas last week. World Food Program is warning of a catastrophic hunger crisis. Many people are warning about how many are going to end up dying as a result of the collapse of the energy and health infrastructure. The more than 17,000 people who have already died might seem quaint eventually once the inevitable consequences of having no functioning energy grid, ability to distribute medicine or food, no shelter, particularly once you get into harder parts of the year, that is going to necessarily drive these numbers up. By the way, more than 70% of those numbers that I cited are women or children, more than 46,000 wounded. So I don't care how hard you're trying. I don't think we have time to play the video, but he goes on a rant about people saying that the IDF are specifically intentionally targeting civilians. And I understand why people are focused morally and ethically and strategically on whether there's intentionality in this targeting. It definitely matters. But so long as so many civilians are dying, what is the difference? So many, the status quo is unacceptable, whether it's intentional or not. And like, honestly, I would get this argument more if the numbers were far lower. Like, to make an analogy, if I throw a rock and it goes through your window, whether I meant to or not really matters. If 100 of my rocks hit your house, does it matter if I meant it or not? It's untenable. You cannot continue with that. That is the situation here. So many people are dying, so many people are suffering, that whatever the intention is, it needs to change. And honestly, I start to worry that having linguistic philosophical debates about intentionality is designed to distract us from the actual stakes, from what is really going on. We're having an argument about what we can divine from people's minds when we should be talking about the situation on the ground and ensuring that that has changed as fast as possible. That would be my message. John Kirby probably not watching, but Rayyvana, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And just to that point, it's the same as when people argue with you, well, it can't be a genocide because we haven't hit a certain number of people dead, which is despicable because that means inherently they believe that we can't prevent genocide because we can't classify it as genocide until the destruction is already done. But it's irrelevant in this case because forcibly displacing people from their homes is a component of genocide. And as you mentioned, John, 80% of the population has been displaced. And the place they were told to move to, the place they were told was safe, is now being carpet bombed. There's nowhere for them to go. And the United States can brag about the humanitarian aid they're sending, but it can't enter because Israel is continuously bombing the places where the aid would enter from. The IDF posted a picture of them supposedly helping an elderly man escape to the south. And it turns out after they took that picture, they shot and killed him, point blank, murdered him. This is not the most moral military in the world as it loves to brag to be. This is a military, a country, a government that is carrying out a genocide on the Palestinian people. And because the United States government doesn't seem to care, it seems like it's totally up to activist organizations to continue to raise the alarm, to media to continue to raise the alarm on what's going on, because most of our elected officials and members of the administrative state are either they are indifferent or they support it. And it is shocking and horrifying. But to people who've ever wondered historically, how do events like this happen? You're watching the consent be created in real time.
And I think that from my perspective, as the Biden administration speaks on this more and more, it just seems like something that they felt like we wish this didn't happen and maybe people will forget. But that ain't happening. You know what I'm saying? Like people aren't going to forget about this. And it's not even like this is an incident or an issue that will kind of go away in a year or two. We're talking about geopolitics. We're talking about an entire nation of people, two or one state solution. Like something has to come from this. It's that fighting can't just stop and then the dust settles and people just carry on. Like this is now a situation. It's not like it's just now a situation where we have to figure out what to do with these two people coexisting with one another. But now we really got to find something to do about it. So I think that absolutely, not just with presidential elections, but federal elections everywhere and even state elections, we're going to see this issue being talked about a lot more, especially because people will, get fired for speaking out about this, lose their positions. So expect to see this grow, and it should grow. It absolutely should grow. So yeah, that's really my final thoughts on it for now, because every time you look at it, it's just plain and clear that the state of Israel is bullying the Palestinians because they can. It's not more complicated.
Okay, we're almost certainly going to talk about this next week on the show. I'm just already I get like a pit in my stomach thinking about what's the number we're gonna have to say next Friday? Like what's the number we're gonna have to say the Friday after that? We keep going up. We were saying 3,000, we were saying 5,000, then it was 10,000, then it was 15,000, then it was 70,000. Every individual life is supposed to matter. I don't even know at 17,000 how you're supposed to think about the individuals at that point. It is so almost cosmically unimaginable.
Thanks for watching. If you become a member, you get to watch all this ad-free, except for, of course, this ad. Still, hit the join button below.